Let's talk about The House, the latest stop-frame animated anthology series co-produced by Netflix Animation and Nexus Studios. 3 stories, all with their own unique directors, which are set at various points in time inside a very unusual house. Let's break it down with an honest review where, of course, there are going to be spoilers ahead. You have been warned. So immediately, right from clicking play, you are invited, you're dragged into this very peculiar world with the distinctive guitar string twanging of Gustavo Santaolalla, who was the composer of the Last of Us games, and it just really does set the scene, and his soundscaping for all 3 stories in this is just magnificent, really well done. Right away, what you'll notice is the animation is just stunning, really. I adore this type of animation with actual physical puppets. All 3 of the stories are written by Enda Walsh. So this first story here, story 1, surrounds a poor family. We have the father Raymond, the mother Penny, a young daughter named Mabel, and a baby daughter named Isabel. They live in a very quaint rural house in a historical setting, and at the start of the episode, they are visited by some horrible relatives, saying that the family's house is dismal, and they refer to Raymond's father being a gambler who lost everything, and by saying that they see a lot of Raymond's father in Raymond, it really does just irritate him, and he decides to take to some alcohol. In the evening, he goes into the woods, and while urinating against a tree, he sees a really creepy carriage appear in the distance, and it lures Raymond in, and there's some sort of creature or person inside of that, and you can see the pair of them having a conversation within this carriage. Raymond returns home and he's starving and decides to devour loads of food and wine, but immediately falls asleep at the table. The next morning, a man appears at the door named Mr. Thomas, who talks about an agreement that Raymond made to the person in the carriage, who we are told is named Mr. Van Scherbeek. In the agreement, some terms were discussed where Raymond was promised a stunning, beautiful house to his family so long as they agree to Mr. Van Scherbeek's terms, which are to give up their property and move into the new one free of charge. When the family arrive to this house, it's very large and stunning. It's a bit like a mansion, really, full of gorgeous furniture, architecture, and loads of appliances, including a sewing machine for Penny, and a fully provided for dining room. While eating at the dining table one evening, some lights appear on the dining room wall, and Raymond and Penny are fixated by the light. They're really drawn into it and almost hypnotized to its power. A little bit similar to the lighthouse in, well, The Lighthouse. Isabel becomes tired and Mabel decides to carry her towards their bedroom, while Raymond and Penny stay in the dining room fixated to the light. There's a fireplace in the house which Raymond lights, and he becomes almost possessed by the fire in the fireplace, and we start to notice that the wallpaper in some of the rooms resembles eyeballs, as if the entire house is a presence in itself that's constantly watching the family. And that rings true with the servants in the house who are performing lots of different work, restructuring the house. But these people are really creepy too, because they just stare at the kids and grunt to themselves, chuckling under their breath. They're really disturbing, and it's fantastic that they've been able to convey a sense of horror and terror and tension from these stop-frame animated puppets. The next morning, Mabel and Isabel come to the top of the stairwell in the house to find that it's been completely removed, and the only way to get back downstairs is to go down a ladder in a hole in the floor. And that leads Mabel to seeing a guy underneath the floorboards who again just stares at them and laughs maniacally. It's really unsettling. She finds Raymond standing at a window looking outside and sees their old house being destroyed. He's just giggling to himself maniacally at the sight of his old family home being taken down and smashed apart for different parts to build up the new house. Mabel later finds her parents wearing really bizarre clothes that resemble furniture. Isabel decides to go on a solo mission downstairs into a basement, and she's a pretty strong baby because she falls down like a 5-foot drop and rolls down concrete steps, but she's just totally fine, goo goo gaga at the end of it. Alright, no worries, love. And in this basement, we find the family's possessions from the old house. We switch to Mr. Thomas cowering in the dark, who is approached from behind by a large creature. Looks like a monster, but apparently I think this is Mr. Van Scherbeek. Penny is constantly sitting at her sewing machine creating material for the house, with her head in the desk like she's almost possessed and lifeless doing all these tasks. Raymond goes into the basement and drags all their old furniture towards the fireplace because he can't get the fire started again, and clearly he's fixated by the flame in some way and wants to reignite it in any way he can. While exploring the house some more, which continuously changes its layout, Mabel comes across Mr. Thomas, who's crying his eyes out in fear. He reveals that Mr. Van Scherbeek provides him with scripts of what to say to the families, and he can't deal with Van Scherbeek anymore changing the layouts of the house. This hints at a backstory that Mr. Thomas isn't a normal person. He's a puppet being manipulated by Van Scherbeek to get families into the houses that he's building. For what purpose though? Well, Mabel and Isabel come across the fireplace, which has their dollhouse from their original home burning on it, and in front of it is a button-backed sofa. This is Raymond. He's been completely converted into a sofa, and then Penny has been completely converted into a curtain. This is really peculiar but brilliant, and it was foreshadowed quite well. It seems as though Mr. Van Scherbeek wants to lure innocent people into his houses and, I don't know, absorb their souls into the furniture. It's not really explained what his powers are or what his purpose is. The fire from the fireplace spreads into the room and almost kills Mabel and Isabel, but thankfully Penny, now in curtain form, extends some fabric out the window and allows Mabel to climb down with Isabel into the snow. They walk into the distance and see the house on top of the hill erupt in smoke, and we fade to black. This first story is absolutely beautiful. Like, it's animated fantastically, and I am just lured into the story right away. And it's a great one too. It was genuinely really creepy in multiple scenes, especially with all the servants just staring at people. And the idea that the house was creating madness within Raymond and Penny was fantastic, and I would have loved that to have been explored further in the series. But as we're about to find out, it doesn't. And I must say already that story 1 is hands down my favourite of the 3. Let's move on now to story 2, and already you have a sharp left turn in the tone, as now the entire story is centred around rodents. We are now in a more modern day urban household, and we spend most of the time following a rat who is not given a name in the episode but is credited as developer, and this developer is selling his house during a recession. But admittedly the house isn't in the best condition. It's infested with insects such as fur beetles, and there are multiple cracks in the walls and the windows and the skirting boards that he's trying to cover up while trying to get the house sold. He spends the entire time rehearsing things to try and be the best salesman possible, and even psychs himself up by listening to Lap Dance, which is a really cool little funny scene, and a banging song by the way. It seems like the developer has a partner who he talks to, but we never hear back from them. He's always sending voice messages, or we only hear one side of the conversation. All the potential buyers of the house come to check it out and put it through its paces, leaving muddy footprints all over the carpets, wiping ice cream on the fish tank. It becomes a bit chaotic, but the developer tries really hard to push the qualities of the house with his best salesmanship, but everyone there just doesn't pay attention to him, and some even just walk out the room while he's in the middle of a speech. The developer drops his phone, causing all the fancy gadgets such as the lights and music system to crash, and it just puts all the rodents off. However, there's two very large rodents who take an interest in the house and inspect further. On the evening of the showing, the developer walks through the house to check if anyone is left inside and finds these two large rodents in the bedroom. They ask for a cup of tea, and then the developer's just like, yeah, alright, fine, and they just sort of spend the night there. They wake up in the morning and they're trying to get the TV working, but then the developer realizes that these two large rodents are kinda having him on and just trying to live rent-free in his own house. Then everything just takes a really weird left turn when the developer lies on his back in the basement, looks up to a grid in the ceiling, and sees all of the insects living in the walls dance in a choreographed sequence. Just what is going on? It looks fantastic, but it's a really bizarre shift in the tone. The developer tries to kick the large couple out, and in doing so contacts the police. The police do appear at the front door immediately, but for a totally different reason. It turns out the partner that he keeps ringing, who you assume is his girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, turns out to be the developer's dentist, and he's got some sort of imaginary fixation that the dentist is one of his friends. or even a lover. That's a really odd extra bit to the plot too that isn't really explored any further. The large rodents become effectively vermin because they invite their entire family to the house, telling the family that the house belongs to them, and then the developer opens up some, I assume it's some sort of like vermin killer or pest control, but it knocks him out in the process, and he wakes up in hospital. The large couple come to collect him and welcome him home, even though it's his own home. The entire vermin family are living there now, and they've been devouring everything. They're just tearing the bedroom to chunks, tearing the electrical appliances, the furniture, the walls, the floors, everything they're just tearing apart and eating their way into, while the developer is just stuck in the middle of it. It's as though he's had an infestation from not only the insects, but from the people trying to buy the house also. The developer crawls into the oven, which has a big tunnel dug into it, and it ends. This one's a bit of a weird one. I did enjoy the stuff with the developer getting the house ready and trying to sell the house, but all the stuff with the dancing insects was just really strange, and I don't understand if there's meant to be a subtext or any kind of metaphor for the vermin at the end. Is this some sort of fable for letting outsiders into your own social space, allowing them to take over? Is it by bending over backwards and being a bit too carefree, you can end up being overpowered? I'm not 100% certain, but overall this one was definitely not as engaging as story 1, and you can tell already that they've added some more comedic tones into this story to try and lift it up a bit, and it juxtaposes quite nicely from story 1. However, I just think I really do prefer the creepy tone that was established in story 1, and was hoping for it to progress through into story 2 a little bit more. It does, however, progress into story 3, which is the most comedic of these stories. The house this time is sitting on a hill in the middle of a lake, and it's been affected by loads of floods. The house is a series of apartments owned by a cat named Rosa, and she has 2 tenants living there named Elias, who is a black cat, and also Jen, who is a spiritualist cat who believes in all sorts of magic rocks and crystals and meditation. But neither Elias or Jen pays the rent with money. Elias pays in fish and Jen pays in precious stones. This really ticks Rosa off because there's loads of problems with the house, like the wallpapering needing doing, the water supply is full of dirt and gunge, and she doesn't have the finance to be able to fix anything because she's not getting paid properly. There's a lot of comedic interactions between these characters, and scripting wise this is the funniest of the 3, with a lot of wit and a lot of warmth and very charming characters here. Jen mentions that she's got a friend who she learned Tibetan throat singing with, and eventually we meet him, a cat named Cosmos, voiced by Paul Kay. So even though Cosmos and Jen are trying to do the entire hippie kind of act and tell Rosa not to worry, just let the ether sort everything out basically, Cosmos also turns out to be a skilled handyman, so Rosa immediately jumps at the opportunity of letting him fix the house for her. So even after agreeing to these terms with Rosa to help her restore the house, Cosmos starts to take the mick a bit and rips the floorboards out from one of the corridors in order to build Elias a boat, as Elias wants to leave the house, fearing that the floods will eventually engulf the house, as they have the surrounding area. But Rosa is very passive to the floods. Obviously something's happened in this world that we are not made privy to, other than everywhere's flooded, and Rosa doesn't want to leave. She's scared of the change of leaving, I think. She kicks up a right fuss because she's fed up of the idea of her house being ripped apart only for other people to abandon her, as they have in the past. We learn this because it's said that multiple tenants left during these floods, and Rosa's been stuck in the situation she's in ever since. The plumbing gets fixed, thankfully, but Elias leaves and sails into the unknown of the mists surrounding the house. Rosa finds some presents left, a fish, and multiple drawings of them, which is really nice and touches Rosa emotionally. Jen then reveals that she's also going to leave with Cosmos, and in a bit of a twist scene, the mists surrounding the house engulf the house, having been created by Cosmos. Inside these mists, Rosa sees memories of her friends before falling through the floorboards into Cosmos's tent, and when emerging she sees that Jen and Cosmos have also set sail. Earlier in the episode, Cosmos says that he's planted a steel girder outside the house, which when pushed with enough body weight can help Rosa escape should she need to. In this desperate time she does this, and it makes the house turn into a giant boat in itself. Rosa Rosa, now captaining the house, along with Elias in his boat and Cosmos and Jen in their boat, set sail onto the unknown horizon. And that's it. It doesn't really have an emotional gut punch here, and I'm not terribly certain of what it is they're trying to say about the character of Rosa. Is it that she's not accepting the world around her? Is she being negligent of the fact the floods are oncoming and she just accepts it rather than wanting to set sail into something more free and perhaps bright? Could it be a metaphor for death? You've got the floods surrounding you, constantly getting closer and closer, and during your life, multiple friends do leave you for either personal reasons or from dying. And rather than trying to set sail into something brighter and happier to try and find some new discoveries, if you stay in the same place, you'll eventually just let the water come to you rather than ignoring that and exploring the water some more. Maybe I'm thinking a bit too deeply about it, but who knows? Overall, story 3 was a really fun one. Definitely had a lot of comedic moments and had a great script. Fun and vibrant characters too that interacted very well together. But I do think this one lacked a gut punch, whether it be a really happy one, I kind of felt indifferent by the end of it, or a really scary one, like with story 1. So that's the house, the animation, the soundtrack, the voice acting, the overall style, the cinematography, the worlds that have been created, the concepts, and both the memorability and originality factors are so strong in the house, and I would really love to see more of these down the line in different houses, different scenarios, different characters, and different creatures. But what do you lot think of the house? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, I'm Connor from Unleash the Ghouls. Make sure you explore every room in your house, just in case anything's lurking behind one of those doors in the corner of your eye. You never know.